Page Cincinnati Reds group on Facebook. This is the audio cast of the end of the season for the group and anyone else. We have a lot to get to, so I'm going to start right off with the manager search. That's what everyone seems to be really interested in right now. At the present moment, Riggleman, John Farrell, all the present coaches, well, first base, third base, bench, and coaches have all been so far interviewed by the Reds. They are also scheduling David Bell, who is the Giants farm director, also former Tigers manager Brad Ausmus, and also just broke about an hour ago that Williams is in conversation with Eduardo Perez, who's Tony Perez's son, who's on MLB.com, had a playing career with the Atlanta Braves mostly and other teams. Considered a really nice guy, Cincinnati native, since his dad played for the Reds and he grew up in Cincinnati. One person who will not be interviewed and took themselves out is Barry Larkin. So he will not be interviewed, will not be considered, although there's probably a minor league spot for him. One note that I have as far as David Bell, the farm director for the Giants, I mean, really, the Giants farm organization is ranked 24th out of 30. I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around him being considered with that bad a performance as far as he was responsible for their farm system. So that I just don't understand. It makes as much sense to me as promoting their scouting directors and player evaluation people into their level of incompetence. But more on that later. Bobby Nightingale and from USA Today and John Heyman, who used to be with ESPN, some other places, now is with The Athletic, both very learned pundits, reported today that right now Farrell, with Riggleman as the bench coach, is the favorite for betting odds amongst pundits right now, and according to a couple of sources. Now back to the front office. This has been a hot topic of mine all season. As any of you all have seen from my posts in the group, the front office is terrible. I've mentioned before, Dick Williams, minority owner's son and nephew. Bob Castellini putting himself in, hey, he's the owner, but we see how an owner being a de facto GM called Jerry Jones has done wonders for the Cowboys, hasn't he? They still suck. And the Reds are going to, as long as this keeps going on. Williams, I can go on and on. He was brought up and trained under Walt Jocketty. Jocketty was fired. A lot of people don't realize, with all his accolades, was fired by the St. Louis Cardinals because Bill DeWitt, the owner, brought in an analytics guy, saw the direction where baseball was going 10 years ago. And Jocketty just wanted to stay old school and didn't want anything going on. So Jocketty got fired, comes over with the Reds, with Castellini. Cardinals go up and stay up. They haven't really faltered under 500, and the Reds have sucked for the last 5 years and 6 years. And only 2 years when they already had players in place did Jocketty do any well at all, but those were not his players. So Uncle Walt has not done any favors. And Dick Williams, if you're learning off of a failure, you lose any chance of success that you're going to have. It's just that simple. Failure breeds failure. Success tends to breed success. So here we have 4 people being promoted. Sean Pender was promoted to Vice President of Player Development from Special Assistant for Player Evaluations. The Reds have a reputation. They're second only to Baltimore in pitcher development. They are third worst, except for Baltimore and Kansas City, in player development, and they're 22nd out of 30 in rank for scouting and player evaluations. Folks, that's a terrible track record. But yet, what does the Cincinnati Reds ownership do? They promote these guys to their level of incompetence. That's a line from the Peter Principle, a book from the 70s. Look it up. It'll make perfect sense to you then. The people tend to get promoted until they get in over their heads, and then they promote them more just to get them out of the way. And that seems like what they're doing. But it's a real shame that you can be a complete and utter failure and still get promoted into a higher position. Again, just makes no sense except on Superman's Bizarro world where everything is backwards. A couple of notes. Yesterday, Gabby Guerrero and Tim Federowicz were waived and passed through waivers and were taken off the 40-man roster. They're both expected to become free agents. I really hope they sign Guerrero back. We have a couple of catchers that need to come up to AAA, so I'm not really worried about Federowicz, and I think he'll be all right. He had a good run, good solid run in Louisville. Guerrero had a great run, 292, 18 home runs. Didn't show that much when he got called up here at the end, but he did hit the home run and all that. So I really hope that he would sign back with us and we can get him back next year to take a fresh look, because the man does have tools. At one time he's a top prospect in the organization he used to be with. So hopefully we'll get to see Gabby again next year. Got the good, the decent, and the bad with the Reds. First, I'm going to start with the longest category, which would be the bad. The bad is our overall ERA was 4.63. It was terrible. The starters overall was 5.02. Folks, that's terrible. That's over 5 runs a game from the starting staff. Our overall from 2017, which was a bad year, was 5.17. So we did improve about half a point. In 2018, the relief corps dropped down to a 4.14. So all of, except for 1/100th of a point of the improvement in the pitching, came in the relief corps this year, not from the starters. And the relief corps went from an overall rating in 2017 of 27th out of 30 to 16th out of 30, which is a very good improvement. So good for them. We have 2 good relievers coming back, Jared Hughes and David Hernandez. They're back on a 2-year contract, and they were lights out. Yeah, Hernandez gave up a couple runs. Hughes gave up a couple runs in September. But, hey, they're still both under 2.60 ERAs, which is fantastic. Hughes is still under 1, or under 2, rather, I'm sorry, 2.0. So, kudos to them. They had a pretty good year, but the overall average in pitching coming down and improving was all attributed to relief and nothing for the starters. The starters had one pitcher out of all the starters we had in and out of there this year, which luckily didn't break last year or the year before's record. Only Luis Castillo had a positive WAR. One pitcher. Again, that's telling you what is going on. So a lot of you are going to ask, the hitting's better, the defense was decent, pitching got better, but we lost one more game this year than last year. How could this happen? Well, just for all kinds of giggles, I fired up the Big Branch Cincinnati Reds fans statistics machine powered by Amazon and Facebook analytics, and firing that up, I came up with a couple of things. Number one, hitting and pitching were out of phase. There were some nights pitchers pitched great, and we lost 2-0. Then there's other nights that we lost 11-10, and the pitchers were terrible. The hitters were good, but we still lost because of the pitching. It's a coordination thing. Pitching is good, hitting is bad. If the hitting is good, the pitching is bad. You've got to balance those out. All the stats say we should have had a much better record than we did. We didn't. And that's the fact of the matter. So that's one thing. The other thing that is really really, really statistic that really shook me bad. And here's a shout out to Chris here again, because he was always griping that he had never seen a extra innings game win. Well, Chris, I'm here to tell you, brother, you're not alone. A lot of people didn't. In all of history, and the first time since 1999, the Reds had the 6th worst record in one-run losses, in one-run games, in all of baseball. All of baseball, the 6th worst of all time. Number four was done by, I believe, the Kansas City Royals in 1999, and all the rest are ancient. I mean, it's really not a good record to be proud of. Then we managed to lose one the last week of the season, so that ran our record to 10 and 29 in one-run games. Come on, one-run games, clutch hitting, clutch hitting, clutch hitting, and did I mention clutch hitting? Front office, Reds, if you're listening, clutch hitting. Okay, a few other things that were decent at best. But before I get to that, Billy Hamilton, bad average. He had a huge drop in steals and can't bunt. Need I say any more? If we can get a good deal out of him, love Billy as a person. He's a great guy, but he is just not a major league starter. And as long as he's with the Reds, Castellini's going to have it that way, and that's the way it's going to be. And he is an impediment to winning. I'm sorry, there's just no other way to put it. His average has consistently been bad. Now the only thing that he really contributes is his speed and his defensive plays. His defensive plays are just as good as they always have been, but that doesn't make up the 50 points behind average he should be hitting. So, you win a whole lot of games with 50 extra points. I've made that point before, so sorry to hear that, but he's got to go. Okay, again, another bad. Here's our rotation, folks. 4 of our people in our rotation. The 3rd worst starter in all of baseball this year is, drum roll, Homer Bailey, over 6. The 11th worst starting pitcher in all of baseball, number 11, Sal Romano. The number 19 worst pitcher in all of baseball, Tyler Mahle. And number 22 was, you guessed it, Disco, Anthony DeSclafani, came in at number 22. Harvey was way out, so he had his earned run average down to just a hair over 4, so he didn't make the really bad list. But 4 out of 5 regular starters for the Reds were in the top 22 out of 182 total qualifying pitchers. Folks, that is nothing to write home about. That's terrible. Okay, some things that were just okay during the season. Joey Votto, he won the on-base percentage. Yay, drum roll. But his power numbers dropped about 70% across the board on slugging average and so on. All of his metrics were terrible on power. He did look like he got some back after he came back from knee injury, and a few weeks later, he seemed to be swinging a bit better. Hopefully it's just a blip. But Joey is 35 years old, folks, so don't be looking for 30, 35 home runs from him. The other okay note, the bench for the Reds is younger. It's the youngest in 6 years. With Blandino, Irvin, some of these other fellas. So as far as that goes, that's a very good outlook. These guys have gotten major league at bats. Not all of them are going to be on the bench next year. Blandino still has the knee surgery to come back from. We'll see how he is. Irvin, Mason Williams. He is. I should have him in the good. Really liked Mason Williams. I loved him in Louisville. He hustled. He hustled. He hustled. He was a good player. You could see he's got tools. I think if he was playing every day or even on a bench role, you saw what he did the last month. He hit like 298, 296, almost 300. Had some power. Made some great catches in center field. With more playing time, I see nothing but better. And also reading some comment boards on the Yankees site a couple of weeks back, there was 4 or 5 people bemoaning the fact that Mason Williams was shining for the Reds and that the Yankees let him go because he was their number 1, number 2 prospect for a couple of years. And they gave up on him. We got him. So somebody to keep an eye on next year, especially if Hamilton would get traded. I would think Mason Williams and Chevler would take over center unless we get a center fielder. But I think Williams would do just fine there for the moment. Bad, again, or just decent. Iglesias had 30 saves, and that sounds good. But the bad part is he had a huge jump in home runs and extra base hits that he gave up. And also there at the end, he gave up at least 1 run. Go look it up, folks. 1 run, at least 1 run in each of his last 7 innings of the season. Not good for a quote-unquote premier closer. On the good side, hey, Suarez, Jeanette, Chevler, Peraza. Peraza came on strong. Got no problems with that. They look great. But we do need to fill some holes and get some better players in certain areas, especially starting pitching. Okay, now as we come up on draft time, Rule 5 draft, regular draft, Reds will be drafting 7. They are in the top 10 again. So hopefully we'll continue a streak of getting some decent players. I read an article that really made a whole lot of sense to me, and I'll leave in this vein with this thought. There are other teams that were rebuilding, some for 1 year, some for 2 years, that are in the playoffs this year. Yes, this year. And that would be number 1. The Reds get all these veteran over-the-hill players, you know, Gosselin and so on, so forth, Pennington, start the season with these guys. Why, I don't know. It doesn't work, hasn't worked as well as John Lamb being a starting pitcher. Had to throw that in. But the Braves, do you realize they have 8 starting pitchers and starting players under the age of 24? They have 2 starters, including Acuna Jr., that are age 20. 2 starting field position players. I mean, really. And look where the Braves are. They won their division. That's quite a rebuild. They were in a 2 to 3 year rebuild. Unlike the Reds' 5 year that's dragging into a 6th. And again, that's on Mr. Williams, the Walt Jocketty claim. So the Braves did it, turned it around in 2 years very quickly. The Brewers, just remember, I mean, they haven't been in the playoffs since 2012. I mean, longer than the Reds. But how did they get in the playoffs? How did they win the division from the almighty Cubs? They were aggressive over the winter, something I've been harping and a lot of you all for the last 3 years for the Reds. Be aggressive during the winter. Be aggressive during the winter. Dick Williams, listen, be aggressive during the winter. I think this year the Reds are going to have to be, because we have too many good players stacked up in the minors, and the Gabby Guerrero, Tim Federich move was just to get them off the 40-man, because we got to protect for the Rule 5 draft. Who are we going to protect? We've got a lot of people to get in there and protect. Those that we can't protect, we have to trade and get some value out of them. But again, you have to have a scouting and player development program that is top-notch in order to do that. We do not have that. We just took the stewards of one of the worst programs and promoted them to oversee everything now. Makes as much sense as a screen door in a submarine for buoyancy. Okay, the other team, the third team, Oakland. You can say Billy Bean, Billy Ball. We've all seen the movie. I've read the book. You may have read the book. That's it. They hire smart people, and then ownership gets out of the way and let the smart people do their job. Folks, these people are getting paid big, big money. The Reds have an analytics department, spent all this money over the last year when it should have 5 years ago, but in the last year over the winter, new analytics department brought it out shiny, didn't do squat. We lost another game. You know, we're way behind the 8 ball because we stuck with the same failed people for way too long. And last but not least, and I say last but not least, is Cleveland. 3rd year in a row. That's your boys, Dan Holstein. I understand that. Cleveland has been there. Too many times Dick Williams uses the crutch. Cincinnati's a small market. We're a small market. We're a small market. Yes. So are the Brewers. Actually, so is Oakland. And definitely Cleveland. They're only 2 ahead of us in the bottom for the smallest markets. We're 27th. They're 25th. But how does Cleveland do it? Cleveland does it by being aggressive, by changing their roster, by making trades to fill in the holes they have, by doing all those things, playing younger players when they need to, being aggressive in the winter, being aggressive before the trade deadline. They went out and got Donaldson for a song and a dance because he wasn't even supposed to be able to play. He contributed very well, hit almost 300 when he played for the Indians. He's done a bang-up job. The Reds, yeah, I have nobody that comes to mind except for the crutch of we are a small market team. This winter is going to be very pivotal for the Reds. They're going to have to go out and make some aggressive trades, make some aggressive free agent signings. Yeah, we're not going to sign any of the big upper tier starters. No, they are hampered with money in a sense, but the owner's already said, Castellini's come out and said, hey, you know, we'll spend more money next year. Well, good. Put it on starting pitching. You don't spend any money on trades. We've got people stacked up at second base and shortstop and every place else. Stacked up. People are salivating. Other clubs are salivating over some of our farm system people. Okay, that happens. Get you a starting pitcher. Just that simple. Not everyone can be on the 25-man or the 40. And we have plenty more kids coming up. There's a big wave from the last 4 drafts coming right up through the organization, even though they're not being developed properly, especially the pitchers. They're not being developed to bunt. They're not being developed for fundamentals. Nothing. They're just, it's terrible. So we need to get some discipline. The new manager coming in, should be announced probably next week from what I'm hearing, is going to have to work on that. We need to get fundamentals, player development going, scouting going better. You know, whoever scouted John Lamb and all that crew we got from Kansas City and the crew we got from Cleveland, or from, I'm sorry, New York Yankees, Rookie Davis and that bunch, nah, nothing there. We have had a couple of good ones. We got Duvall, got a couple of good years out of him, and now, you know, nothing. So we really need to improve. Until we do that, nothing's going to change. It's going to be Einstein's definition of insanity, doing the same failed things over and over and over and expecting a different result. And so far, for the last 3 years, Dick Williams has done the same things over and over and over and expects a different result. I'm sorry, Dick. You're nuts if you think you're going to win a championship with what you've been doing. It's the results are there. It's a complete and utter failure. Scrap it, get smart people and get out of the way, get aggressive in the winter, let the kids play, bring them up and let them play, and don't get yourself framed in a box that you're a small market team. There's nothing you can do about it because small market teams have won a ton of World Series here recently. It's not just always the Yankees and the Dodgers. So get that out of your mind because you're only hindering yourself, and we really need to get this team together to start winning, or there's going to be nobody in the stands next year. The next vidcast will be as soon as there's any draft or any big trades or any big news. If you have any compliments, any comments or anything else, you can either leave them at bill.mcclure@gmail.com or just go ahead and post them in the Cincinnati Reds, the Big Branch Cincinnati Reds baseball fan group, and I'll be glad to answer them. You all have a good winter. Unfortunately, we only have football and hockey and NBA to watch over the winter. But being an MLB TV guy, I can always go back and watch baseball games and archives at any time. So I'll probably be watching baseball archives and looking at some pictures that I've got on the list that I'm going to come out with here pretty soon. And like I said, as soon as there's any trades or any drafting, anything going on, we'll have another one. And for now, that's it. This old left-hander's rounding third and heading for home.